Hello, my name is Dr. Cotto. I'm the superintendent here at the Schenectady City School District, and I am here with District Director of Safety and Climate, Jeff Russo. Welcome.
Good to be here.
So can you start by telling us just some of the recent changes that we've had or the changes that have taken place within the last 3 years?
Sure. So over the course of the last 3 years, when we started our work, we were looking at buildings that were approximately 95 years old. We know that. We had buildings that had very few safety updates. So when we took a look and evaluated, we had some cameras in buildings, we had some swipers in buildings, nothing that was tied together, no systems in place for safety. The doors, if there's 140 doors on the high school, all of them could be open at any point in time. We just didn't have a way to make our buildings secure. So the first goal was really to start looking at what are some of the best practices out there. How do we start with this blank slate and start to move it forward? And so we picked out some systems and layers of what we could make changes with. We took the state ed guidelines and regulations, and we just kind of went to work. And I think that whenever we're evaluating safety, we're looking at the layers we can add, the relationships that we build, and then we constantly evaluate it.
So Jeff, can you share a little bit about what are some of the best practices that we've kind of put in place?
When it comes to safety, you start to really focus on not necessarily the things you see, but really what you don't see. And we've spent about $15 million in the last 3 years on physical upgrades to buildings that people largely don't see. It's things like door alarms, it's things like secure vestibules. And a lot of these safety upgrades are what has brought us up to the level that we should be at. And so when we say best practice, is talked about for visitors coming to a building. You have a system in place where they're stuck in a secure vestibule when they walk in. They can interact with a person who's behind a window. We do a background check. We've added a lot of pieces where, if we didn't do those things, I can never say that I'm sure who's in the building.
How does that support leadership in the building, students? What kind of protocols are put in place for that?
So when we added the door alarms, what it was it gave us a way to say, okay, the hallways are clear and we know that nobody left. It used to be that kids could come and go, as much as they wanted to. Like I said, all the doors were open in many of the buildings. And so it's added this layer of we've identified who came into the building. We now know that they're still in the building. Between upgrades to our surveillance system with the cameras, our access system with swipers, the changes that we've made ensure that we know who's in the building, it's the proper people to be in the building, and if somebody leaves, we know it.
So Jeff, as you share kind of the infrastructural pieces, from the secure vestibules to the alarm doors, let's talk a little bit about personnel. You have a team called SSOs. Can you share a little bit about what that team really means?
So when it comes to like our safety team that you're referencing, we started 3 years ago with a dozen people that we started putting into the buildings. We've grown to about 90 safety staff, and that is staff that are dedicated exclusively to safety. We train them as though they are first responders in the building. They have some medical training, CPR, first aid, AED training. We also train them in de-escalation techniques through our TCIS and through our student support services. So we've tried to create a system where we have people in the hallways all the time who are able to respond to crises that come up, but also they are eyes on safety. They're the ones who make sure doors are secure. They're the ones that make sure alarms are working. They're the ones that do the regular checks to help maintain the building.
Would you say that the relationship that these SSOs have with our students has had an impact on the overall decisions and choices that children are making?
Yes, I think the careful selection of safety team members is important. I think that safety team members were, by title, some people hear the words security monitor and they think of a security guard. We don't hire security guards. We hire people who want to work with kids. We hire people that are interested in building relationships with kids. And the goal is every student in the building needs to have a meaningful adult relationship. They have to connect with somebody. Mm-hmm. So the more people I can put into the building to connect with kids with safety in mind is really the ultimate goal. We say, how do we accomplish that? We can put weapons detection, we can do all these different things in the buildings, but at the end of the day, those relationships are what create the safe environment.
So question for you, what happens when there is a safety threat to a building? How does it activate this team in response?
The first thing we did was we met the state standard on what emergency protocols needed to be in place. The state has had a little bit of shift this year to a new protocol, the standard response protocols through the I Love You Guys Foundation. When you look at the card, you see we have 5 actions that we can take as a school. So when an emergency situation happens, we're going to activate one of these protocols. First is a hold. Hold is just freeze the building. Everybody stays put. If you're not in a room, we try to grab people into rooms to make sure they're in a room. This can be done for a medical emergency. It can be done for a lot of different reasons where we need to have the hallways clear and we need to make sure we've accounted for everybody. So we take attendance, we do all the basic things that we would do in any emergency protocol, and the building is frozen. The next would be a secure. Secure is something we've heard. Secure is used to be called lockout. They've changed the term because it was confusing when it was called lockout. But the term secure means just what it says. Secure the building. Lock all the doors. Don't let anybody go outside or come into the building. But usually that's in response to a threat in the community. Usually that means the police have called us and said, secure your building. We tell everybody, hey, we're in a secure, and that just alerts everybody not to go outside. It doesn't change the operations in the building at all. Next is the one that most people are familiar with, which is lockdown. Lockdown is where, we instruct the kids and teach them it's a game of hide and seek and get behind a locked door. Lockdown is for the ultimate, there's something really bad going on in the building. It's a threat inside the building. A lot of times in an actual lockdown, we cannot actually release the rooms. We need the police to come in and release the rooms. Next would be an evacuation drill. Evacuation is, most people refer to it as a fire drill. Evacuation means we're getting out of the building. There's something bad going on, a fire, where we need to get everybody outside, take attendance, and be accounting for everybody. So we evacuate, we get out. And then the last one is a shelter. Shelter used to be called shelter in place. We just say shelter now. Shelter is when there's some type of weather emergency, a hurricane, a tornado, something where we need to get away from glass, get away from large areas that could be dangerous. It's important that we teach all of our students what they mean. None of these terms are meant to be scary. We don't drill in any way that's meant to be scary. The state passed some new regulations this year that require that your drills be trauma informed. So we have worked to make sure that we've given an explanation to staff, we've given an explanation to students on what that means as far as we're not going to scare people. We don't run drills that are realistic to scare kids, to scare staff. Everything we do is announced. We let parents know a week ahead of time when we're running a drill. The main key is that for us, we want to stay with best practice, and best practice is that we're not scaring kids. We drill to make sure we know what to do in an emergency.
So Jeff, a question. When an emergency happens, and our goal here is to be transparent with not only our staff but the community, what are some of the steps that we take in order to make sure that we're communicating with not only those that are in the building, but then our parents and our community?
Yeah, that's a great question. Communication is key all the time. And I think that we try our best with every incident that happens, and we try to improve with every incident that happens. So when we talk about communication in any type of incident, the best thing I could probably do is throw out a scenario, right? So a student reports to somebody that they know a student has a weapon. And that person, let's say it was a safety team member, that safety team member has a couple options. They can either communicate to everybody, we're going to go to a hold in place over the radio, or they can go tell an administrator, hey, I heard this, at which time the administrator will probably put the building into a hold in place. Let's find that student. All of this is very fluid. It moves very fast. If it's a weapon, we're probably going to get the CEOs involved, our community engagement officers. And so the communication that we want to get out is primarily general communication at first, because we don't ever want to speak without facts. We don't ever want to put something out there that's not true, right? So this could be a rumor. That could be somebody that never had a weapon. Maybe a friend of theirs said that to get them in trouble, to try and set them up in some way. So we always want to have facts. So we can't be too quick to put out communication, but we also live in the information age right now where communication's instant. Kids are immediately telling people at home what they think is going on or what they heard is going on. And so when kids say, I heard, we have to track that down all the way. We are cognizant of that, and we do our best to get something out to staff in the building so that they know why we might be in a hold. They might know why the emergency protocol was called. But then we also want to get something out to parents to say, look, we know something's going on. We're investigating it. The CEOs are involved. We'll keep you posted when we have more information. If we have more information, we will oftentimes put it out with the police. We want to share information at the same time, because we know that we don't want the police putting something out to our parents before we do. These are students, and when students make bad choices, we don't just make that public. And I think that's where it's always a balance. And so our goal is to get everybody the information that we can share as fast as we can. But we know that we can always do better. And one piece that makes that better is every single time a situation happens, we we meet as a team. I meet with a safety team. I meet with the administrative team. I meet with law enforcement. We all meet together as a faculty. And then we talk about what we could have done different, and we learn from it, and we move on.
And I would just like to share with the community that, I mean, the transparency is a extremely important part for us. And I think that, as Jeff just shared, it's the communication in which we're receiving and trying to make sure that we can provide factual information to the community. We do understand that our students, are sharing with families things that might be going on in the building, and as a parent myself, that is a concern when you receive a text from your child indicating that something's taking place. But do know on our end, we're trying to gather all of the information in order to provide factual information out to the community. When we do have situations, there's multiple things that take place right after that. You mentioned the debriefs that take place, but then we also have a safety committee. So I'd like Jeff to share a little bit about our safety committee.
Sure. So as a district, we're required by state ed to have a district safety committee. The district safety committee is supposed to be made up of as many stakeholders as possible. So we include all different teachers, we include all different administrators, we also include community members, we include the police department, we include the fire department. Because of the stakeholder representation on the committee, anybody in the public that wants to speak to their parent liaison or speak to a school safety officer, all of those different groups will bring the information to the district safety committee. So I think that when people have thoughts or ideas or need clarification, it's best to go to some of the resources within your child's building. There's a safety button in Let's Talk. I get lots of safety concerns brought to me in Let's Talk, and I answer every single one. I really want everyone to know that they're more than welcome to reach out anytime. We're always available to answer questions that they have.
Jeff, can you share what has been one of the biggest positive steps that we've had, as it relates to the work that we've done thus far?
If I look at safety as the layered approach, and I look at the relationships that we have, the layers that we've built, and the evaluation that we've done, I think that we're getting good training to our staff right now. I think that, if there's anything that people see, I want to know about it. If there's feedback that we can get, I want to know about it, because we are on a good trajectory. When we came out of COVID 3 years ago, like I said, it was a blank slate. We had nothing in place, and it showed. And it definitely had a different feel in the building than it does today.
And I'd also like to highlight, Jeff, you speak of our safety officers, but also going back to the investment that the board has made in the commitment to overall safety, and knowing that, I've shared earlier, just restorative practice specialists, attendance specialists, counselors, parent liaisons, community school coordinators. These are all members of a team, members of our community that also build upon the relationships, which will continue to kind of build and strengthening that relationship between the district and the community. As we kind of wrap up, what would you say, Jeff, would be our next steps?
I think based on feedback, the layers we have in place now, I would like the next step to be to start to explore some weapons detection systems and what they can bring for keeping weapons out of our buildings. Because it's not fair to the learning environment for all of the 99% of the kids doing the right thing to have in the back of their mind that somebody might have a weapon in my room right now. And so I think that with all the feedback we've gotten, that's where I think our next direction has to be, to at least explore where we're at with that.
So just to share with the community, as we shift in exploring weapons detection and just kind of unpacking a lot of what's kind of taken place within the last couple of weeks, but also things that are happening not just in Schenectady, but across the country. If you have questions, concerns, suggestions, please, if you can utilize our Let's Talk app as a way in which to communicate with us, that would be great. So once again, our next board meeting will be on September 25th here at 530 Liberty, starting at 6:30. We will have opportunity for open comment at the beginning and the end of that particular meeting, so we're hoping to see you there. Thank you.